Mr. President, and I want to really thank Senators Schumer, Senator Wyden, and Senator Sanders and others for working so hard with me on making sure that our relief bill includes a much-needed raise for our workers. Democrats and Republicans alike have joined together in rightly calling our essential workers heroes and the backbone of our economy. But despite their tireless work and the constant risk of COVID exposure, too many of these workers are paid wages so low they cannot afford to pay for even their most basic needs. This pandemic should be a wake-up call that these workers, who we all call heroes, deserve more than $7.25 an hour. I urge my colleagues to vote for the Sanders Amendment in order to give a much-needed raise to millions of workers and end the tipped minimum wage and sub-minimum wage for youth workers and workers with disabilities. After more than a decade since the last federal minimum wage increase, the tides are turning and there is overwhelming support for Congress to act. So let me be clear, today's vote is just one step in our fight. We are not going to give up. And today we're going to keep working to get this historic bill across the finish line. Because right now, Mr. President, this country is on fire. And Republicans' biggest concern seems to be that we might use too much water. The reality is we are far from doing too much because we will not have done enough until this crisis is over, until families across the nation are safe, and until we rebuild a stronger and fairer country. Anyone who says this bill is too expensive needs to understand how much this pandemic has already cost our communities, how much it has already taken from families, and how much more is at stake if we don't finally bring it to an end. They need to listen to public health and healthcare workers who have been straining to test, to contact trace, to vaccinate people across the country, and to grapple with the trauma of fighting this pandemic on the front lines. They need to listen to parents who are asking how they are supposed to go to work when they don't have childcare and their kids can't go to school in person, wondering how they're going to pay rent, how they're going to pay for groceries, how they're going to pay to keep the heat on, and fearing what will happen if they cannot. They need to listen to students who this pandemic has robbed of critical school resources as well as opportunities to grow and thrive and socialize with their peers. They need to listen to our states and our cities and our tribes and our territories who have seen their budgets upended. And they absolutely need to listen to people of color, to voices in the Black, Latino, and tribal communities who have been hit the hardest by this pandemic in every way. Because anyone who has been listening to the American people, anyone who has been watching what they have gone through, understands the danger in this moment is not doing too much, it is doing too little. If Republicans want to talk about too much, there are almost 10 million fewer people working compared to this time a year ago, 11 million people at risk of eviction, and 11 million people about to lose their unemployment benefits. That's too much. One study says by June, this pandemic will likely have set students back 5 to 9 months in math from where they could be in a typical year, and that setback is even larger for students of color. Another notes that schools across the country have shifted to remote learning that 1 in 4 students lack access to internet at home. And according to the CDC, 1 in 4 young adults has considered suicide. That's too much. Since the start of the pandemic, we have lost over 650,000 jobs in higher education and 1 in 6 jobs in childcare. That's too much. Across this country, this virus has infected over 28 million, left thousands of long haulers still experiencing symptoms, and killed over 500,000 people. That is too much. We have to act, Mr. President. We have to, and that's why we are fighting to pass the American Rescue Plan. This American Rescue Plan will send families long overdue direct relief and prevent expanded unemployment benefits that have been a lifeline to so many people from expiring. It will help get vaccines in arms faster. It will hire and train more public health workers. It will ramp up our testing capacity and invest in programs to counter the disproportionate harm COVID-19 has caused, specifically to communities of color and tribes. It will expand affordable insurance to more families and give schools much needed resources to help our students get back to classrooms for in-person learning safely. And it will stabilize our struggling childcare sector, which is so critical to helping women and working families get back to work. It will support small businesses and help states keep educators and firefighters and sanitation workers and others on the job. So before my Republican colleagues worry any more about the cost of doing all that, I hope they take a moment to consider the staggering cost of failing to do it. There is a reason bold action like this plan has the support of Republican governors like Jim Justice in West Virginia, the support of Republican mayors like Betsy Price in Fort Worth, Texas, or Francis Suarez in Miami, Florida, or David Holt from Oklahoma City. And according to a recent poll, the support of a majority of Republicans. That same poll showed the American people support this package by an overwhelming 3-to-1 margin. People support this American Rescue Plan because the American Rescue Plan supports people, workers, families, communities who know firsthand the loss and hardship of this last year. And because they understand the simple fact that when the house is in flames, you do not argue about how much of the fire to put out, or how much water to use, or how many lives to save. You do whatever it takes until the crisis is over and everyone is safe, and you do it as fast as you can. That's what Democrats are trying to do today. That's what this bill is about. And I urge every single member of the Senate to support it. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.